no ha sido significativo. Creemos que los impactos más fuertes se están presentando a raíz de temas como inflación, como costo de insumos y, por otro lado, por supuesto, impacto en cadena de distribución. Creo que las medidas que se implementaron se hicieron rápidamente y que no representaron una inversión muy significativa.
¿Y ustedes creen que cuando pase el COVID van a mantenerse todas estas nuevas medidas de salubridad o va a bajar la guardia?
Pues primero que sí pase, creo que es lo que todos queremos. Yo creo que lo que se mantendrá es la prevención, todo lo que es la metodología de prevención, sí.
¿Qué es más importante para sus huéspedes? ¿El business center o una tecnología de comunicación en todo el hotel?
Antes de contestar esta pregunta, quisiera hacer un comentario sobre la previa. Creo que lo que es importante mantener es la capacidad de respuesta ante crisis, tener equipos preparados, ser muy flexibles y adaptarse rápidamente. Ahora, respecto a la pregunta de si business center o
conectividad
individual, no sé cuándo fue la última vez que hemos visitado un business center, pero ahora nuestro business center es prácticamente este.
¿Un restaurante casual o un restaurante tenedor o room service?
Pues mira, nosotros la verdad es que estando en todas las distintas categorías tenemos un poco de todo. Lo que más bien estamos viendo es que un restaurante de tenedor se está teniendo que adaptar a tener opciones de take-out que a lo mejor antes no tenías, adaptándose a las necesidades del huésped, más que sustituirlo, sino más bien es adaptarte a la necesidad que el huésped te solicite, independientemente que sea una cafetería, un room service o un restaurante de tenedor, ¿no?
¿Spa o gimnasio?
¿Vacaciones o placer? Viaje de negocios.
Bueno.
Depende de tu cliente.
Perdón. ¿Check-in y check-out en el front desk o en el móvil?
La verdad que yo tendría que responder lo que solicite el huésped. Nosotros tenemos las dos. Hay gente que sí quiere que alguien lo atienda, que lo reciba, que lo oriente, aunque sí estamos viendo en nuestros kioscos de self-check-in que le llamamos, que la gente llega y hace él solito su check-in y le llamamos un contactless check-in.
¿Continuarán reemplazando a los viajes de negocios las reuniones virtuales?
La respuesta es no. Al hombre de negocios le encanta viajar, a la familia del hombre de negocios le encanta que se vaya de viaje.
¿Cuánto tiempo le das a una total recuperación para el segmento de negocios?
Esa es la única pregunta que mandaste, Raúl, que yo quise venir a que me contestaran aquí en la mañana, pero realmente con las estadísticas que nos han compartido, lo que vemos es que la región de Latinoamérica es de las que más cercanas está a la recuperación en viajes de negocios.
¿Y el Airbnb es un aliado o es un terrible competidor?
No es un terrible competidor. Creo que hay demanda para todo tipo de productos. Acabo de ver una encuesta en el mercado de Cancún. Representa poco menos del 3% de la oferta total de habitaciones que hay en la plaza y está en función de qué tan capaz eres de mantener a tu cliente leal a tu marca o a tu hotel.
¿Y en otras ciudades de Latinoamérica cómo está impactando o qué influencia tiene el Airbnb?
Yo mencionaría, nosotros estamos básicamente enfocados en negocio de placer y de business travel. Ahí vemos que es un poco complicado que la oferta típica de un Airbnb sustituya lo que tú necesitas cumplir en un viaje de placer, que necesitas eficiencia en tu viaje para lograr tu objetivo, y por otro lado, en el de placer lo que quieres es ir y que te consientan, quieres experiencia, etc. Lo que sí afecta en el tema del destino es que mientras más Airbnbs hay y más gente viaja a ese destino, la oferta aérea es la misma. Entonces, independientemente de que el huésped viaje a un hotel o a un Airbnb, está utilizando oferta aérea y eso sí puede tener un impacto en la capacidad que existe para el destino y en los precios.
¿Y qué tanto han prosperado las iniciativas de control fiscal sobre la oferta de Airbnb?
Han prosperado. Ya hay muchos países en los que cualquier persona que tiene un Airbnb o cualquier otra de estas plataformas ya están pagando impuestos de carácter federal. Otros vienen en proceso. Y en algunos países están buscando incluso no solamente impuestos a nivel federal, sino también a nivel estatal y local. Piso parejo.
Piso parejo. La tendencia que viene mostrando la demanda desde hace ya muchos años a cada vez una segmentación y atender los deseos y preferencias cada vez más del individuo, hasta el último individuo que está eligiendo sus servicios, no va en contra de la idea de estandarización de las marcas hoteleras?
Yo creo que la labor que tenemos nosotros como operadores y en nuestro caso diseñadores de marcas es anticiparnos a esas necesidades de los huéspedes independientemente del tipo de viajero. Lo que vemos ahorita es que las generaciones están conviviendo en el mismo espacio y conviven millennials, conviven baby boomers, muchos tipos de segmentos conviven en el mismo espacio al mismo tiempo. Entonces, independientemente del COVID o no del COVID, creo que la actividad de nosotros como operadores va a seguir siendo anticiparnos a satisfacer las necesidades que cada huésped va a tener, porque el hotel va a estar ahí 20, 30 años, entonces no lo puedes diseñar solamente para un tipo de segmento, ¿no?
Estas tendencias y a futuro significaría una flexibilización de los PIP lists, de los requerimientos de estándares, o se va a mantener rígido.
No solamente una flexibilidad en los PIPs, que estará en función obviamente de la capacidad financiera de tu cliente, sino también una flexibilidad y un mucho más detallado análisis de la evolución de las marcas per se. Es decir, las marcas de vez en cuando, o algunas con más frecuencia que otras, actualizan sus estándares de calidad, actualizan sus estándares de construcción, sus estándares de servicio. Todo estará en función de encontrar un balance justo entre la necesidad del cliente y mantener un retorno de inversión en lo que se está solicitando.
Cuando un propietario negocia con ustedes o cuando busca una marca, ¿a qué le da más prioridad? ¿Al renombre de su marca o a la capacidad o fortaleza de sus plataformas de distribución?
O sea, al final tiene que ser una mezcla. Lo primero que tenemos que asegurarnos es que el negocio y los intereses estén alineados para que realmente sea un negocio para ambas partes. Por un lado, la plataforma es lo que nos va a permitir llevar a los huéspedes al hotel, y la marca que estemos sugiriendo para el producto nos puede diferenciar un poco en el nivel de tarifa que logremos llevar, pero tiene que ser una mezcla al final y tiene que ser negocio para ambas partes.
¿Y qué pesa más en la contabilidad de un hotel con una franquicia de una marca? ¿Los descuentos que se obtienen de las OTS por trabajar a través de la marca? ¿O pesa más la carga de los fees y otros fees que tienen que pagarle a la marca hotelera?
Bueno, si te entendí bien la pregunta, los cargos por marketing y reservaciones que hace cualquier marca van estrictamente dirigidos a generar demanda y a generar demanda que pueda ser canalizada a través de canales de menor costo. Y por supuesto, dependiendo de la marca, a generar una mayor base de clientes leales a través de sus respectivos programas. Veo bastante más valor en inversiones que te va a resultar en negocio de menos costo que comisiones a terceros.
Una pregunta más difícil todavía. Con esto de la pandemia, ¿será que se podrá en un futuro indexar el monto mínimo de CAPEX de un hotel a los resultados que genere la marca?
Pues ese es un tema complicado y el tema aquí es que la variable es que no todo sucede al mismo tiempo. Los resultados del hotel y las necesidades del CAPEX no se dan en el mismo periodo de tiempo. Entonces, ahorita nos estamos enfrentando a hoteles que se agotaron la reserva de CAPEX durante el COVID y ahorita apenas estamos empezando en esos mismos hoteles a llegar a buenos resultados. Yo creo que el tema es que nosotros como operadores, aliándonos y en conjunto con el propietario, logremos tener el producto adecuado en las condiciones adecuadas para poder cobrar lo que necesitas cobrar.
¿Cómo quedaron los hoteles después de la pandemia, comparado a los independientes con lo que estaban con una marca?
Monitoreando el comportamiento de la industria, pudimos ver que los hoteles con marca se comportaron de una manera menos en su caída, menor en su caída, y cuando inició la recuperación de ocupación y la tarifa sufrieron mucho menos y avanzaron más rápidamente. En pocas palabras, el desempeño de la hotelería de marca, quizás en función a lo que dio a conocer sobre las medidas de higiene, de seguridad, de lo que estábamos hablando hace un momento, el usuario respondió más rápidamente hacia los hoteles de marca que hacia los hoteles independientes.
A mí me gustaría mencionar un tema de esta pregunta anterior. Nosotros también lo que vimos es que durante la pandemia no solamente era el cómo te va mejor comercialmente o con una plataforma de distribución, pero al estar con una marca durante el COVID, todo el cobijo, indicadores de atender crisis, responder rápido, tener el apoyo para todas estas cuestiones nuevas que estaban saliendo. Era también muy agradecido por estos propietarios y no nada más la parte comercial, porque hay otra gran parte de este cobijo que traen las marcas, pues de estandarización, de acceso a proveedores, de respuesta de crisis, que también era muy valuado durante la pandemia, ¿no?
¿Se ha recuperado la confianza de inversión en nuevos hoteles?
Sí, la respuesta es sí. Desde el año pasado tuvimos la oportunidad de cerrar casi una docena de nuevas licencias y en lo que va de este año se han firmado varias más. Estamos viendo ya un renovado interés, y la prueba aquí está, en recuperar el crecimiento. Sentimos que hay recursos que durante casi 2 años no han sido puestos en operación, proyectos que venían planeándose antes de la pandemia, están volviendo a tomar actividad y han surgido nuevos proyectos.
¿Dónde se ha visto en América Latina el mayor crecimiento en inversiones?
Bueno, nosotros en México estamos viendo un crecimiento muy importante en marcas de lujo y de ultralujo. Yo creo que varios colegas de aquí traen algún proyecto que van a abrir o que están ejecutando. México sin duda, y estamos viendo las islas más fuertes del Caribe. Creo que son las que, regresando un poquito a cómo lo explico, aquellos que estén más conectados a mercados fuertes y sólidos con frecuencias aéreas fuertes y de alguna manera ya establecidas, son las que van a poder atraer más estas inversiones más rápido y capitalizadas.
¿Quiénes están invirtiendo? ¿Grupos patrimoniales, family offices o inversionistas institucionales de Europa, de Estados Unidos o grupos regionales?
Hay una enorme diversidad. Hemos visto familias en lo particular, hemos visto family offices, hemos visto capitales de otras regiones del mundo interesados en llegar a América e inversionistas institucionales. Hay una reactivación, si bien no generalizada a lo largo y ancho de la región, sí en mercados como los destinos leisure y en algunas de las ciudades incluso secundarias de varios países de la región.
¿Y quiénes están financiando?
Esa es una pregunta que tratamos de venir a contestar muchas veces estos foros. Sí vemos a la banca, después de tantos meses que han pasado con el COVID, la banca que está metida en hotelería la vemos un poquito más bullish de estar metiendo dinero, más enfocado a negocios para placer y para playas. En la parte de negocios urbanos, todavía vemos un poquito de holding back para la inversión.
¿Qué es mejor en este momento? ¿Renovar o construir nuevos hoteles?
Como visión, creo que está en función del mercado en el que te ubiques. Hay plazas que están viviendo una recuperación sumamente lenta, atribuible en algunos casos a la sobreoferta. Al mismo tiempo, esto ha traído la oportunidad para algunas adquisiciones, pero si estás en un mercado que claramente tiene una demanda tangible, estarán las oportunidades para nuevas inversiones.
Y última pregunta, creíble. ¿Estamos listos en Latinoamérica para el producto de ultra luxury?
Yo creo que sí, sin duda. Yo creo que Latinoamérica y el Caribe, siendo el mercado más cercano a Estados Unidos, donde tenemos una capacidad de captar esa demanda de alto nivel, sin duda estamos en el lugar adecuado y en el momento adecuado. Yo creo que también la coyuntura pues, mundial y post-COVID, lo que también nos ha dejado es que la gente quiere viajar a un buen lugar, pero también quiere ir y regresar rápido. Y el Caribe y Latinoamérica, con la red aérea que ya tenemos, la infraestructura, yo creo que lo permite. Tú puedes llegar a Cancún, puedes llegar al Caribe, puedes llegar a Panamá, puedes llegar a muchas spots importantes de Latinoamérica y a tener una muy buena vacación, fácil y rápido. A diferencia de quizá planear un viaje más largo a Asia, Europa, un crucero, donde hay muchas otras variables que no puedes controlar. Pues yo creo que sí estamos en el momento adecuado para el desarrollo de hotelería de lujo y para arriba. Y estamos en una geografía que además yo siento que tenemos que capitalizar por la cantidad de americanos que tenemos a 3 horas.
¿Tus palabras finales de la perspectiva para los próximos años?
Crecer, crecer y crecer. Yo creo que el mercado lo va a permitir, la demanda lo va a permitir y además como región tenemos un factor que es la capacidad de brindar experiencias de todo tipo con una riqueza histórica, cultural increíble. Se hablaba acerca de si estamos o no preparados para experiencias ultra lujosas. Todo está en función de la capacidad, infraestructura, recurso humano, y creo que la cultura latinoamericana ha demostrado más de una vez que cuenta con eso y más.
Señores, hemos ganado la apuesta. Todavía quedan 2 minutos, así que un aplauso a nuestros panelistas. Nos suman 25 minutos.
Felicidades a ti, Raúl, por el
Muchas
tiempo.
gracias. Ya estamos.
Some interesting things on the horizon. Let's now talk about numbers. We will invite our following panel members to join us on stage. Rogerio Basso, Head of Tourism, IDB Invest. Sana Abu Said, Country Manager for Central America, IFC World Bank Group. Christian Roberts, President, Prime Managing Partner at Creo Capital. They will be presenting the financial agenda in order to discuss economic policy changes for Latin America and the Caribbean in 2022.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Arturo and SAHIC, for putting this great event together. It's great to be back. During the next couple of minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about the financial and capital markets related to hospitality and tourism. And I have two of the leading players in that sense, especially from the multilateral front in our region. So let's take advantage of that and dive right into it. Sana, as country manager of our Central American region for IFC, what is your view on tourism and hospitality as a capital provider? And basically with two twists to that question. One, in a circumstance like the one we lived in the last couple of years where the macroeconomic variables were basically blurred, and normally those are the hotel performance indicators or the drivers of hotel performance indicators. How do you manage that from the capital market perspective? And then where do you see opportunities now that we're, I would say, safe to say, out of this pandemic?
Thanks, Christian. Buenas tardes a todos. Very nice to be with you here today in person. My first conference in person after more than 2 years, so definitely happy to be here. Back to your question, so, and I work at IFC. I'm the regional manager for Central America. We are the largest multilateral institution in the world dedicated specifically to the private sector. For us, tourism obviously is an important sector. It's one that we've been dedicated to for many years, and the reason is clear. We are in development. It's very important in terms of creating employment. It provides huge benefits to the whole supply chain, not only in the hotels themselves, but clearly all the jobs that are created around that globally. And particularly when you look at certain subsectors of hotels, the all-inclusives, for instance, and their impact on the whole supply chain around them. If you look at certain countries where the economies are 100% almost related to tourism, Maldives, for instance, we've developed significant expertise in the sector. We've done in our deal sheet more than 300 projects, more in about 100 countries globally. About $4 billion in investments to date across regions with a specific focus on East Asia and Pacific, Latin America, and the Sub-Saharan African region. Obviously, I don't need to give you more details. You've heard throughout the whole day, and everybody in this room knows how hard hit this sector has been, unfortunately, since COVID started, specifically due to the restrictions on international travel and all the losses that we've had in terms of revenues and also in terms of employment. We talked in 2020 about a little bit over 60 million jobs globally that were lost, and we're hopefully going to make up for sometime in this year or next year at the latest. And right now, everybody's reading and listening to the current war that we have in Ukraine and the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Luckily, this region does not receive a lot of tourists from that region. So not that much impact if we compare Latin America, for instance, to certain countries in Europe, to certain countries in the Middle East, such as Dubai, for instance, as one of the favorite destinations. But we might be indirectly hit as excess capacity in these countries might attract some of the tourists that historically come to Latin America. In terms of the opportunities and what we look at, and I'm speaking here again from the perspective of IFC as an investor, and debt provider in the tourism sector, we see 4 key areas. One of them, which we did a lot of at the beginning of the pandemic, and that's in terms of providing liquidity to tourist companies, hotels, and so on, to kind of help with really weather those first 3 to 6 months of the pandemic where pretty much everybody was closed down. We did several projects globally. I'm just going to highlight some of those. We did $150 million facility for the Shangri-La hotels, for those of you who are familiar with the chain in Asia. Here in the region, we did 2 projects with the Xcaret group in Mexico for about $90 million. Those of you who know the Mexican market know that this is one of the key players with a huge impact on the local economy. And we've done also recently a PE fund investment. That's the first area. The second one is additional capacity. And here we're extremely selective, so we're going for partners that are well known, that have a proven track record, that know really the sector very well, and are already on a good financial standing for us to help them with that increased capacity. And we are right now, for instance, looking at an investment in, I can't say the country, it's still ongoing, but it's a large investment, over 1,000 new rooms with one of our partners that should hopefully see the light very soon. The third area where we're very active is the whole support to financial institutions, and we've done lots of work in capital solutions, particularly for financial institutions, so that in turn they can lend to the SME segment, and many of these are part of the tourism sector, so they're indirectly benefiting from our investments. And the final area, and I'll stop after that, is the advisory space, where we're extremely active in terms of doing lots of hand-holding, specifically in the green and climate area for many of our clients in the tourism space, or clients of clients, let's say financial institutions, to help them be leaders in that space, readjust some of the existing buildings so they are EDGE certificate, so that they are more energy efficient, to reduce the operational costs and really help their performance look better, and help them attract potential investors like us, our friends from IDB, for instance, that are more and more looking at this sustainable and climate angle.
Okay, thank you. I think it was very, very clear. Rogerio, as head of real estate and hospitality at IDB Invest, you have a view of the entire region, and some of our markets changed quite a bit over the past couple of years, some more than others. How do you read those markets where you don't have macroeconomic variables that are clear in any given moment from your perspective, especially if you're trying to deploy equity, such as what Sana was saying right now, to help, to grow, to improve? How do you measure that risk?
Well, happy to be here and sharing the panel with Christian and partners like IFC, who we've done projects together in the past. When the pandemic hit, we have the triple sudden stop that we call it, right? There was a reduction in mobility because of the lockdowns and people not being able to move. You had a reduction in trade, both in volume and prices. And then you had the financial flows, both direct investments as well as remittances. And that created a situation where we thought we were going to have a lost decade in Latin America. Everyone was extremely surprised to see how quickly we were able to recover in 2021. To the point that commodity prices, they were significantly depressed, and yet today you see meat, soy, oil, obviously, copper, among many other commodities that have fully recovered and even exceeded the prices that they were before. So that provided some normalcy to the region, which is giving some comfort in terms of macroeconomic indicators. As it relates to the situation of specific countries, the biggest concern remains to the fact that governments had to step in and provide a lot of support and subsidies to a variety of sectors within the economy to keep them solvent. And that created a debt burden that is of proportions we have never seen in the region. So now there's a significant amount of pressure to issue fiscal reforms in Latin America and the Caribbean. And those fiscal reforms, as you know, are highly questioned by the taxpayer because they're in need of capital, and yet there's a fiscal reform that is going to put an additional burden. So the biggest concern going forward is what is going to be the government's ability to be able to reduce the debt burden. Now, as it relates to the tourism sector, and we've heard throughout this morning, the positive news is that recovery is on its way. And depending on the market that you are, whether you focus a little bit more on leisure, whether you focus a little bit more on domestic demand, you have been able to recover in a decent fashion, and many markets have already exceeded a 2019 performance. So what, as an institution that is counter-cyclical, you know, just to give you a frame of order magnitude, last year we had a record year in terms of approvals, over $23 billion across our public side, which is sovereign lending, and the private sector. Never had we done that volume of activity in the region, which indicates not only our role as a development institution, not different to IFC, to be there with our partners when the region most needs it, but also trying to weave through the tea leaves, you know, and understand what is the resiliency of a variety of sectors and what is the ability for it to recover. And tourism has proven to be one of those industries that, despite being significantly battered, it is turning around. And whenever you have a situation of daily leases that you are able to adjust pricing based on demand, you're able to be much more creative and adapt to situations. So back to your question, our thought process is that there is an ability to assess risk, even in a situation where there is a volatile environment, where there is a lack of visibility going forward, but the strong fundamentals of the system should allow for continued investment and debt to exist.
Thank you, Rogerio. Sana, sometimes it feels we walk out of one to walk right into the other one, right? And right now we're walking into a period of high volatility and inflation. Real estate typically is seen as a flight to safety alternative investment. In that same sense, what would you say about hospitality within that aspect?
So again, speaking from the lens of, and everybody sees things differently, but I'm speaking from the lens of a global investor and debt provider. This is a risky segment. It's a very risky segment. That's how we look at it. It's more of a long-term investment, and like commercial property, real estate, you're really looking at a long-term investment. You have to be at the right place at the right time, the right capacity as well, and it's really dependent on the cash flows. I mean, how sustainable are they, how reliable are they, and how long is it going to take you to recuperate your initial investment. And of course, every hotel is different. Every hospitality asset is different from the other, and there are many factors that come into play, and even putting COVID on the side and the externalities on the side, at the end of the day, you're really talking about supply and demand. I mean, that's the equation that you have in place. So the way we look at it is, if you have a demand that is steady, predictable, and then you have a supply that remains limited and adequate, then you're in a win-win situation, obviously. But if you have a demand that is unreliable, as we are these days, and a supply that keeps increasing, then this is not a good investment. In terms of how we look at it as well on our side, and where our efforts are going to be focused going forward, as I mentioned, I mean, our initial focus was, let's stand by our portfolio clients, let's provide liquidity, working capital solutions, so that, you know, jobs are protected and businesses keep running. But also in terms of potential investments, the capacity project increase that I mentioned earlier, we're very selective, again, because of the riskiness that we perceive in this segment. So we try to look for partners that have very diversified portfolios. We all know, for instance, that hotels that cater mostly to conferences and business have been much more hard hit than others. So you want to see a partner that has quite diversified portfolio, a mix of business hotels, of budget chains, heritage hotels, luxury, and so on, which you can rely on different segments as you're doing business. We're looking also at the quality of the sponsors quite a bit, the knowledge of the sector, a proven track record, obviously good financial position. We look as well at the green aspect that I mentioned earlier, which is extremely important for us in doing business, and sometimes we link loans to the climate and the green focus of the operation as well, as we make sure they're Paris aligned and they're going into the decarbonization efforts that we have as some of our mandates. And then we also look at innovative ideas. We want to see what's extra, what's the new edge that we have here, what is this new operation going to bring forward compared to the competition, be it in the region or in the country as well.
Thank you, Sana. Rogerio, what are your thoughts on that sense as well?
I mean, from our point of view, we see that there are a variety of investment partners at a local level. When we think about banks, for example, almost every single transaction that we do, we have a local bank that we bring along in order to help with the expansion of the local capital markets. So when you think about the role of development financial institutions like ourselves, there is a specific area where we can be most accretive. And when you think about the region, is the size of the deals and the complexity is something that DFIs are well equipped to be able to support. So think about deals that are $75 million plus, $100 million plus. The local banks typically do not have the ability to write those types of checks, and large institutions like ourselves are able to not only think through ticket size, but also the complexity of the deal. When there are innovative concepts, whether it is development of new destinations, new concepts that are coming online, for example, everything related to lifestyle hostels. We did a significant investment in a Selina platform, which is a regional player in the region. New concepts requires a significant amount of effort, which DFIs are typically willing to put in the time to think that through and finalize the transaction. And the last area is everything related to SEG, social, environmental, and governance. Those projects that are trying to push the limits of sustainable and responsible development, trying to do things in a different manner to the way it's been done in the past. We try to identify those demonstrative examples to be able to showcase this is the way that you do something different, this is the way that you do it right. So whether it is having supported the first LEED certified hotel in Jamaica, the first LEED certified hotel in Costa Rica, focused on some of these innovative concepts. Allenda is a distribution platform not different to Oyo hotels from India. They came to Mexico. Unfortunately, it's a case study of an introduction into a new market that was not successful. But Allenda is a similar platform based out of Colombia that is growing regionally that we invested on recently, and it demonstrates the ability to support small independent hotels, get them to have distribution, get them to have a solvency in a moment that is very critical for the sector. So I think there's a role for a variety of players in the sector. We tend to see each other, ourselves as partners with local commercial banks and trying to assist in projects that have certain characteristics that fit our development impact mandate in the region.
It's interesting because, and I'm leaving a couple of things out, but my take from this is that the quality of the sponsor is definitely very important, but then both of you in your answer are saying, those innovators, those that are willing to take the next step to transform, to improve, we're going to back you. And that's an interesting approach from both of you, and obviously as a multilateral development bank, it makes all the sense.
Exactly.
Larry Flink, who is CEO and chairman of BlackRock, said recently, or actually a couple of years ago, but he said, climate change is a business opportunity because addressing it will require that virtually every segment of industry will have to be reinvented. In other words, we're walking into the green economy, and that might be 5 years from now, 30 years from now, 50 years from now, but that's a reality. And he makes reference to a green premium that various players are now willing to pay. The end user, willing to pay a higher ADR because the hotel has good ESG practices or is doing good in terms of climate action? The investors, the bankers, and then the market. And in the market, people are going to be willing to pay for more for your stock if it actually does good to the planet, et cetera, et cetera. In that direction, how do you see this apply to hospitality? What have you seen recently? And maybe we'll turn it around and start with you, Rogerio.
The term that you're describing is basically impact investing. And what we've been hearing for the past 3 to 4 years is that transactions, they need to be something more than financial deals. They need to have impact. And what is that impact? It is not only environmental sustainability, but also social sustainability, which is how are you activating the local value chain? How are you working with the local community? How are you doing something that is different and responsible for the long term? Now, this sounds very pretty in theory, but in actuality, there is research that shows that those projects that are able to generate local development impact, they are more sustainable long-term from a financial point of view, meaning that when you have an employee that is from a vulnerable group that has been able to now participate in a project and is fully committed to that employer, to that project, is going to stay for longer. It's going to be more loyal, is going to provide a different type of service. And that connectivity that happens with the local community and the project is extremely tight. So over time, the ability of that project to withstand trepidations and market shocks is going to be better. So the thought about impact investing, it is what DFIs have been doing for over 60 years. I think we're finally getting a little bit of credit that that's the way that you should select and filter deals. But it goes beyond the environmental aspect. It is thinking about the entire spectrum of stakeholders that are affected during the various decision-making processes. Now, clearly, everything related to climate change, climate resiliency comes front of mind, but thinking about the social sustainability is key. Everything related to digitalization and those trends that are coming online are also elements that we discuss. This month is Women's Month, so there are enormous efforts to close the gap on gender equality. We need to be able to rise women to a different level. We talk in Latin America about 54% of women participate in the labor force. In the Caribbean, it's about 59%. And at first glance, those statistics look extremely promising and good. But within the tourism sector, a lot of those women, they participate as housekeepers, they participate in the kitchens. Very few have supervisory or top executive positions. Actually, in the United States, I think it's only 7 or 8% of women who are CEOs of companies. So the discussion around gender equality is not only how do you close the gap, but how do you provide opportunities for that growth to continue in the future. So when the CEO of BlackRock says those businesses, they need to be reinvented, it is a matter of trying to understand that deals, they're not financial in nature, but they need to activate the local communities. And that's the mindset that needs to be different. When I'm signing a franchise agreement, a management agreement, when I'm employing my people, what am I going to do different than I was doing in the past?
Okay, thank you. Sana, in that same line, and I'll do a 2-in-1 in sake of time. What do you see, or what role do you see natural capital playing in LATAM within this industry that is experiential? And then one closing question, what do you see for 2022 and going onward?
Look, I mean, and I totally agree 100% with Rogerio. I mean, you do have, it's the days of just doing financial modeling and looking at the IRR, which is still a big component that drives our investments. But those days are long gone. I mean, a good project is multi-layered. So obviously you have the financial performance and what's the expected cash flows and the region and all the fundamentals of the project itself. You have the sponsor quality, integrity, due diligence, and so on that we do. You have the whole environmental and social, the sustainability, the governance practices as well of the company itself. And then you have the whole gender angle that Rogerio just mentioned, where indeed, unfortunately, when you go to the C-suite and when you go to board level positions, you have very few participation of women in other industries as well, but perhaps more so in the tourism industry. And in my sense, not only as in the right thing to do, but this is a huge opportunity cost for these companies, because at the end of the day, most of the time, the drivers of going to a hotel A or hotel B is going to be the wife, is going to be the matriarch of the family. So not having that representation at the level of the board of someone who understands this segment and really influences the decisions is just, to me, a no-brainer that you do need to have parity at those levels so that your strategy that the board is driving really takes into consideration the women participation. In terms of where we're looking at demand and where things are going in the future, obviously none of us has a crystal ball, but at least in the short term, we do expect still quite a bit of domestic tourism. Just because it's easy, people want to go to places that they know, that are reliable, and that more or less under control. We are all hoping and prayer that Omicron was the final wow moment of COVID, that after this we're going to move on to more or less normal lives. But clearly going with that comfortable space is going to be the way going forward. A personal experience back in December, my family, we were trying to book vacation, and we haven't been on any, and we spend all of our extra income on vacation. We love to travel, but we haven't been able to do anything since COVID started. So almost our last wow vacation was in Asia back in January, February of 2020. And so we sat down and looked at different locations, but because of the situation, we have small children that are not vaccinated yet. So we said, well, let's stick to places that we're comfortable with. But because of the whole situation, we came up with plan A, B, and C, just in case one of them doesn't work out. And all of the destinations are places we know, we're comfortable, we know the health system, we know how to get in and out, we have friends and family. First destination was Morocco. We had the tickets, we have everything set in space. 1 week before the trip, Morocco closed the frontiers of the whole country for 2 months. So luckily, we could recuperate our investment in the vacation. So there goes our option A. Option B was a country in France, France in Europe, which again, we know the system, we have family members and so on. And right again, because of the increase in the cases and the situation in the hospitals and so on, and the family that we were supposed to travel with got COVID also a couple of weeks before, we said, okay, this is not gonna work. So we went with option C, which was California in the US, a country we know well, we know the medical system, it's not too far away to fly from here, and we just felt comfortable. We'll hit the airport, we'll rent a car, we know where to go, we knew the hotels very well. So you kind of have that. I mean, yes, it's not super domestic, but it's regional, it's the unknown to me that will probably take a little bit more time to become mainstream again unless things are fully under control. And again, the situation of COVID, the restrictions, the quarantine requirements will influence a lot of this demand that we're seeing. And in general, I mean, I think not only, and I know most of hotels, unfortunately, are coming this in a really financially strained situation, but they have to look at all the other elements that we mentioned earlier, you know, the gender, the sustainability, ENS practices, board practices, governance, digital presence, which we know is even much more so important than it was prior to COVID starting.
Okay, thank you. Well, we're out of time, but I would say that...
Didn't Raul give us 2 minutes? No?
Sure.
Go ahead. See.
Go ahead.
I think when there's no doubt that our region has been disproportionately affected because of COVID. But and it's also important that we cannot look at all these statistics on a global basis. What's happening in the Caribbean is phenomenal. You know, the recovery of the leisure market is outstanding. And all of that push towards all-inclusive is a trend that is here to stay. I believe that you know, this is a model that is quite interesting. However, the challenge that I would pose to all of the major companies that are looking to the sector is all-inclusives can no longer be the large, big boxes of the 1980s. You know, you have a customer who is more sophisticated, who is looking for authentic experiences, who wants to explore the countries. So how do you create this product whereby the way that is sold, it's all-inclusive, but you're allowing the guest to go outside of the compound, to enjoy local experiences, to enjoy the country, and then to be able to come back in the future because there were things that were left unseen and that are important. So I think the evolution of the all-inclusive product is key. And secondly, thinking about our region as a whole, it is extremely fragmented from a capital markets perspective, from a product point of view. You look at third-party management companies. You know, there is significant room for consolidation and for that sector to get sophisticated over time. So I think that the takeaway is when you look at investment in the region, both from an equity perspective, but from that point of view, there is opportunity because of that fragmentation. There is a return of the fundamentals that is gradually coming back. And the sentiment when you talk to these capital providers is that you have the fundamentals to be able to analyze risk, price risk, and be able to invest for the midterm starting 2022, 2023, and beyond. So from IDB Invest, we continue to be excited about the region, excited about the sector, and we have ability to continue to be active in the region.
Arturo Florencia, sorry for the delay, but when the banker asks for time, we have to give it to him. Rogerio, Sana, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.
Pleasure. Thank you.
It's now time for a crucial subject, climate change. We thank Elaine Merovic, Head of Division in charge of Advisory Services at IDB Invest, and the head responsible for the climate change agenda for this inspirational talk about what tourism will look like in a net zero future. Bienvenida, Elaine.
Buenas tardes, ¿cómo están? Bueno, ya salió el banquero, ya salieron los banqueros. Yo también trabajo en un banco, pero a diferencia de Rogerio, que conoce este evento y ha venido participando, esta es mi tercera vez. Estuve en Quito, estuve virtualmente en el 2020 y hoy tengo el gusto de estar de nuevo con ustedes. ¿Pero por qué les digo esto? Porque creo que también estamos caminando hacia un new normal. El nuevo normal de que en conferencias sectoriales como estas, que puede ser de turismo, tengan un panel de cambio climático. Cuando yo empecé a trabajar en cambio climático, no había muchos paneles de cambio climático. Es más, a los paneles a los que yo iba eran todos environmentalists, ambientalistas, expertos en cambio climático, y siempre tratábamos de ver cómo ayudábamos a avanzar la agenda. ¿Cómo? Sin embargo, han pasado muchas cosas en los últimos 10 años, diría yo. Pero les voy a hacer un recorrido rápido por los hitos importantes que han pasado para poder después contarles dónde estamos y hasta dónde tienen que ir ustedes, porque necesitamos que todos trabajemos en esto. Algunos de ustedes recordarán que en el 2009 hubo una COP, la COP es la Conferencia de las Partes, en Copenhague. Se lo consideró un fracaso. ¿Por qué un fracaso? Fue Obama, hubo muchísimos presidentes, hubo muchísima gente. Terminaba de definirse el protocolo de Kioto y era el momento en que se tenía que definir cómo íbamos a seguir adelante, cómo se iba a pasar de una división entre países ricos y pobres o desarrollados y en desarrollo para todos tener un compromiso de cambio climático. No se logró. Lo que sí se logró fue que los países desarrollados tuvieron una meta. Pusieron la meta que a partir del 2020 iban a contribuir 100.000 millones de dólares por año a los países en desarrollo. El año pasado mucho de la COP estuvo alrededor de se cumplió o no se cumplió la meta y la verdad es que esa meta no se cumplió. No se llegó a los 100 billones o 1.000 millones de dólares en el 2020. Y muchos países desarrollados dijeron, la pandemia. Pero tienen que saber que los recursos que van a los subsidios de combustibles fósiles, hablamos de trillones al año. Entonces estamos hablando de que todavía no hay una alineación entre incentivos, entre el desarrollo y la agenda de cambio climático. Pero sigamos adelante. ¿Qué pasa en el 2015? COP21, por primera vez países desarrollados y en desarrollo se comprometen a tener una meta net zero. Ya les voy a comentar qué significa net zero, pero una meta net zero. Todos tenemos que, en las NDCs, contribuir y poner metas y planes para reducir las emisiones. De ahí en más se empieza a trabajar lo que se le llamaba el Rule Book, cómo iba a ser cada artículo. Y en Madrid, bueno, era Chile originalmente, si se acuerdan, 2019, crisis social en Chile, se pasa a Madrid, queda un artículo por definirse que se definió ahora en la COP26 en Glasgow en el 2021. Esta COP no solamente que incluye el tema del Rule Book, definiendo finalmente el artículo 6 de mercados de carbono, sino que también por primera vez en la historia de las 26 años de negociación se mencionan fossil fuels, combustibles fósiles por primera vez, y carbón, generación de energía de carbón por primera vez. Y el tercer punto es que por primera vez se comprometen a que no vamos a pasar a más de 1 grado y 1.5 grados centígrados. Bueno, dirán ustedes que bueno, ya está, we're done. No. Déjenme decirles dónde estamos. Sí, a nivel de negociaciones logramos un avance importante, pero eso no significa que hemos logrado revertir la tendencia que tenemos, que hoy por hoy, de acuerdo a un estudio de PNUD, UNDP, que se llama Emissions Gap, que salió en octubre, justo antes de la COP, decía que estamos en 66% de chances de estar en un mundo superando el 1.5. Y decía que básicamente estábamos tendiendo hacia un mundo de 3 grados. Hay algunos compromisos que no están dentro de los compromisos legales, entonces ellos dijeron, bueno, estos otros compromisos que hacen empresas o que hacen municipios podrían llegar a reducir a 2.7 o 2.5. Todavía estamos lejos. Los impactos que tiene 2 grados, es que los corales van a estar todos muertos, que vamos a tener 4 meses de sequías al año, que va a subir el nivel del mar 56 centímetros y que va a haber wildfires, como los de Canadá, los de California, y los heat waves, que ustedes ya han visto. Y eso tiene un impacto directo en el negocio de ustedes. Con la COP, muchos países salieron a decir que tenían otras metas de net zero. Y entonces el Climate Action Tracker, una organización independiente, reconoció que sí se implementaban esos compromisos, podíamos llegar a un mundo de 1.8. Todavía no estamos en below 1.5. Pero es importante que les estrese el punto de si se implementaban. Se sabe que tenemos que hacer, todos sabemos que tenemos que hacer. Tenemos que dejar de tener subsidios a combustibles fósiles, tenemos que electrificar el sector automotriz, tenemos que descarbonizar la electricidad, tenemos que fortalecer nuestros bosques, sobre todo en Latinoamérica, nuestros bosques, improve efficiencies en todo el sector de construcción, tenemos que aumentar la resiliencia y la capacidad restaurativa de los ecosistemas también. Sabemos cuáles son las soluciones y sabemos que muchas de estas soluciones tienen un efecto multiplicador aún mayor que el business as usual. Un estudio reciente dice que el efecto multiplicador en la economía de uso sostenible de la tierra es 6 veces más que la deforestación. Sin embargo, seguimos deforestando. Pero no solamente tenemos un problema de mitigación, de reducir las emisiones. Tenemos un problema de adaptación y nuestra región es específicamente vulnerable al cambio climático. En el BID hicimos un estudio que íbamos a necesitar 100.000 millones de dólares por año para tratar de resolver el problema de cambio climático, de responder a los impactos de cambio climático. Y si podemos invertir hoy y podemos reducir básicamente, si invertimos hoy esos 100.000 millones, vamos a estar evitando $4 en el futuro. Por cada dólar invertido hoy, evitamos tener que gastar $4 al futuro. Y no solamente que nosotros sabemos de estos costos, pero sabemos que hay muchos negocios a nivel global que ya están gastando en servicios de resiliencia, que están haciendo monitoreo con nuevas tecnologías. Y tenemos que tener en cuenta que muchos cambios pueden venir, que pueden convertir a nuestros activos en activos varados. Activos varados significa que aunque yo haya invertido y piense que lo voy a operar a 10 años, por ejemplo, una planta de gas, esa planta de gas por una regulación de reducción de emisiones solamente va a poder operar 5 años. Me quedo con un activo varado. Entonces tenemos que mantener el valor de los activos y para eso necesitamos incorporar cambio climático. Y entonces, recién Cristian mencionaba, tenemos que actuar ahora, en 5 años, en 10, en 50. Yo les vengo a decir que tenemos que actuar ahora. Tenemos solo 8 años antes de que esto no tenga vuelta atrás. Ese 66% de chances que dice el reporte de Naciones Unidas va a ir disminuyéndose. Y la IPCC, que es el panel intergubernamental de cambio climático, nos dice que tenemos solo 8 años. 8 años no es nada. 8 años no es nada. Y la inversión que ustedes hagan hoy, si no tienen en cuenta el cambio climático, las van a poder perder. Se les va a convertir en un activo varado. Entonces, para mí, el principal mensaje que les quiero decir es que tienen que actuar hoy, no en 5, no en 10, hoy, en cambio climático. Pero no solamente hacer un press release o un commitment que va a nivel internacional y se sale en los diarios y es solamente vinculado a cambio climático. Tenemos que entender que cambio climático es una variable más de los SDGs, de los Sustainable Development Goals. Tenemos que tener una integralidad en los planes que tengamos, incorporando sostenibilidad desde el inicio, porque esa sostenibilidad es la que va a ayudar a que ustedes no tengan problemas de inputs, que no tengan market distortions, que no tengan problemas sociales que hagan que sus operaciones no puedan continuar. Entonces, el mensaje aquí es que si bien yo estoy hablando de cambio climático, cuando ustedes empiecen a diseñar sus planes, esos planes tienen que ser integrados. Pero, les tengo la buena noticia, cambio climático no es solamente un costo, es también una oportunidad. Si bien lo vamos a hablar más en detalle en el panel, algunos estudios mencionan que como inversión hay 50 trillones, o sea, 50.000 billions de dólares de asset que están buscando inversión en ESG. Para la región estaban estimando en 1.2 trillones. Si se enfocan solo en las ciudades, se considera que pueden atraerse $5 trillion. Pero no solo esto, tiene beneficios en costo, de ahorro en energía, por ejemplo, pero además costo de capital. Recién Sana mencionaba los Sustainability Linked Bonds o Sustainability Linked Loans. Nosotros también los estamos haciendo, básicamente vinculando el financiamiento a un KPI. Un KPI que si usted lo cumple se les baja el costo de capital. Pero además tienen otras oportunidades, como oportunidades de instalar cargadores de movilidad eléctrica, que va a atraer a un consumidor que también gasta más. Y pueden atraerlo a su lugar y también les da, obviamente, reputación a su marca. Entonces, hay una oportunidad, pero además de la oportunidad, voy a hablarles de 3 tendencias que van a afectar sus acciones a futuro. Y voy rápido porque veo que el reloj está corriendo. 1. El mundo financiero está buscando este tipo de activos. Hay un Net Zero Banking Alliance, después se hizo un Net Zero Asset Manager Initiative y también un Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance. Todo esto se combinó finalmente porque iban a niveles, distintos ritmos, digamos, en lo que se llamó el GFANZ, que se lanzó ahora en la COP26, que es el Glasgow Financial Alliance to Net Zero. ¿Esto qué significa? Más y más, no solo la banca de desarrollo, pero la banca privada está empezando a trabajar en sus estrategias net zero. Eso significa que quieren coherencia en qué se está financiando. No quieren solo financiar parques eólicos por un lado y fossil fuels por el otro. Se quiere hacer una alineación y trabajar en lo que se llama la alineación con París. Nosotros como Grupo BID también nos comprometimos que a partir del 2023 todo lo que nosotros financiemos será alineado a París. Esas global trends, esas iniciativas, acá les dejo algunos ejemplos de cómo la banca privada, la banca regional e incluso algunos grupos están generando productos específicos para poder cumplir sus metas, que tal vez se lo pone la casa matriz, para tener un financiamiento sostenible. Y el sector turismo no quedó por fuera. Muchos de ustedes sabrán que en la COP se firmó la declaración en Glasgow de Climate Action. Eso era parte de una estrategia más global de Race to Zero, que se estaba enfocando en la economía real. Recién les mencioné básicamente todo lo que estaba pasando en el sector financiero, pero en la economía real, en el Race to Zero, liderados por Gonzalo Muñoz y Nigel Topping, generaron esta alianza de la economía de distintas compañías que llegan al 50% del GDP global para reducir las emisiones al 2030. El sector turismo se comprometió a reducir las emisiones al 2030 por la mitad y ser net zero al 2050. Y Panamá, por ejemplo, es parte de los signatarios de este compromiso de Glasgow. Y ese compromiso de Glasgow habla de 5, pero sobre todo habla de que hay que medir nuestra huella de carbono, hay que descarbonizar y hay que regenerar. Pero además de eso, hay que hacer planes de acción y hay que colaborar y buscar unlock financing. Hay otra tendencia que también está pasando, que estaba ya pasando antes de COVID y se ha fortalecido, que es que en la sociedad misma hay tendencia de querer buscar aquellas organizaciones para trabajar o aquellas organizaciones para consumir ese producto que sea net zero. O sea que los futuros customers y clientes, pero también los futuros empleados, tienen esta tendencia. Y Net Zero Future significa que tenemos que reducir emisiones, que ya no podemos dejar que solamente lo hagan los fossil fuel industries. Todos tenemos que trabajar, como lo demostró el Race to Zero, y que tenemos que descarbonizar. Y llega un momento en que sí, es como una balanza. Net Zero es, tengo que reducir las emisiones y en algún momento voy a tener que compensar. pero esa compensación que haga a través de bonos de carbono o a través del mercado del artículo 6 de París, va a estar bajo la lupa para evitar el greenwashing. La sociedad ya sabe que existe el greenwashing y quieren evitarlo. Y quiero decirles que también no tenemos que olvidarnos de la adaptación. Recién mencionaban, y eso es una de las cosas fascinantes de este sector, y leyendo un estudio dice que el ADN del sector turismo es la adaptación. Se adaptaron a COVID, se pueden adaptar a otros impactos y también se van a adaptar seguramente, lamentablemente, si hay todavía un problema en Europa, en Ucrania, ¿no? Pero también tenemos que pensar un poquito más a largo plazo y empezar a adaptarse a los impactos del cambio climático. Al final, lo que necesitamos es que todos hagamos una promesa, sí, pero con un plan. Necesitamos aumentar la ambición de todos, pero con accountability. Porque si no, hay 3 sectores que no van a estar contentos, o pueden estar muy contentos: los inversores, los consumidores, clientes y los empleados de hoy y los empleados de mañana. Porque al final de cuentas, the only way to build our future is to invest on it. Ahora quisiera invitar a mis panelistas.
Indeed, the only way to build our future is to invest in it. Thank you, Elaine. We invite you to stay on stage and receive the members of our next panel because it is the year sustainability moves to the top of the agenda. Ana Ramirez, Senior Lead Designer, OPM International. Emilio Perez, Vice President, Global Design, Gala Marriott International. Ricardo Moreira, Managing Director, XCO2, and Jesus Parrilla, CEO, Into Hospitality.
Well, thank you so much. Now I'm switching to English. Thank you for starting to share your experiences in the area of sustainability. And I will start with Ana. Because I want to start with the hardware of the hospitality, the design of new hotels, of new resorts. Do you see a trend coming of asking you and demanding a better design linked to sustainability?
Absolutely. I think this is not working, right? Can you hear me well? Or no? Okay, I'm going to try.
Yeah.
So I definitely believe that sustainability is going to be a priority. Definitely the COVID lockdown has raised the stakes on healthy buildings and the importance of really getting rid of all these sick buildings that have evidence to not only affect our physical and mental health, but also our cognitive behavior, which affects productivity, performance, concentration. So all this shift, there's definitely a shift in consciousness, and this mental crisis have raised the demand on sustainable strategies and design. And we're not only seeing, like, in Caribbean mostly, we're not seeing just clients that request for sustainability, green strategies, but fully integrated sustainable communities that have wellness at the core of the business. So we're seeing medical wellness resorts with permaculture, biodynamic, sustainable farm-to-table experiences. So it's becoming really big in the Caribbean, and in LATAM, on the contrary, we've seen that the sustainability is still a strategic pillar of many of the operators that we work with. But since Latin America had a lot of issues with economic crisis, with the pandemic, so many of the owners have been trying to stay afloat. So sustainability practices have seemed to be more postponed. But we've seen many savvy owners getting ready and taking this as an opportunity to do better for whenever the economy recovers. So I have to answer this question from the healthy perspective, just because we've seen how the pandemic has showed us that there's a strong link and connection between climate health and human health. So last year, I was at the Global Wellness Summit, and there was a phrase that really stuck to me, and it's, why live 100 years if we have a planet that cannot sustain life, that is so damaged that cannot sustain life? So we definitely have to do something now, take action for future generations. And it's not about how do we reduce the impact on the environment, it's how can we regenerate the environment, how we can restore ecosystems, and that supports human and planetary health. And on the other hand, I also have a very good note that I recently saw that Mexico and Brazil actually enter into the list of the top list of certified buildings. And for me, that was a great news. It only tells us that sustainability will continue to be the priority in our region.
Thank you, Anna. And maybe now moving more to the software part of it, in a way. I just mentioned that adaptation is in our DNA. Emilio, what do you see happening in the sector in terms of the operations of are we adopting circular economy? Are we doing other issues that have to do more with how we operate?
Sure. I believe, we've heard a lot about resiliency. We've heard a lot about reconstructing. And there's one word that we have not heard about much is adaptability. And you hit it on the nail today because we have to adapt. And I could not agree with you more that today is the day. In fact, it was yesterday, really. But today is the day. We cannot wait. I was talking to Ricardo just a minute ago before we came up that at first I wasn't sure if being here today was appropriate, coming from the largest hospitality company in the world. However, it's important to mention that we're taking sustainability very, very seriously, more than ever today. And in fact, we've been talking about how our global partners within our organization have taken a very close, very deep look into sustainability and adaptability coming from where we have been in the last 24 months. I think if one thing we have learned from this experience, from this moment in our lifetime, is to be adaptable. And each one of us, just let's face it, none of us left home for a while, right? So that was a personal decision we made in order for us to be better neighbors, to not bring this virus to other people, to bring it to our older parents or grandparents. And effectively, by doing that, we were also taking care of our community. But at the same time, where we were doing that, we also taking care of our region globally. So more than ever, we are interconnected, more than ever before, because of this situation. So this is the moment in which we could take those big powerhouses, like the Marriotts, like the Hiltons, like the Hyatts, and come together and create this very important move. Because once again, we don't have yesterday. It's gone already.
Thank you, Emilio. That's very hopeful to know that the big brands can be a game changer. We were talking about it over lunch, and what's the key to increase adaptation? I was just saying, and he was mentioning, oh yeah, it could be through the brands, and you just said exactly the same thing. Work with the brands; they can pilot it, maybe. It's not the only way, but we need to do a partnership to include adaptation as well. Ricardo, I glanced over very quickly on the climate opportunities so I can show that it's not only something negative, but there is a business case here. Can you explore more this idea of the opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. We all know of the potential cost savings. We all know of the reputational brand awareness aspects that can come from some of the things that we're talking about here. But I wanted to touch upon some of the points that you had during your presentation about that we're actually seeing in practice. We're seeing a lot of interest on, sorry, my microphone is not the best, but we're seeing a lot of interest in extending lifetimes of assets due to, in trying to understand how you can push forward this moment where an asset's emissions actually exceed the Paris targets. And we're seeing that on projects. We're also seeing a lot of interest in green loans and more favorable financing for efficient projects. And finally, climate change adaptation and risks. So investors are really interested in knowing why a property, what the risks are associated with a property, and before they actually move on to make an investment. So those are actually opportunities that there are out there that are really more related to the financing aspect of it.
Jesus, we were discussing before the panel, and you knew I was going to talk about investors, clients, and employees. But what was your take on what we should be going? Is sustainability an add-on or something that we need to think from the beginning?
Well, sustainability is like when you build a hotel, you don't question, whether you're going to put a bed on the room or not. A bed goes in the room, so it has to be from the get-go. Sustainability has to be part of the core of whatever you design and whatever you operate on how you operate. I think it cannot be something that is nice to have. I think consumers, we see it today, consumers demand sustainability. Some of them may not want to pay for that, but they expect it, the same thing they expect running water in a hotel, in a bathroom. Then there is this element too that we are seeing more clearly today. To attract talent, you need to have something that is attractive. Your company has to stand for something. And just bringing the right people is going to have major advantages. Retaining talent sometimes is costly, for companies. So I think if you have ingrained in your business model sustainability, the potential and the economic impact long term is tremendous. I think one of the challenges, and we were talking about it earlier, is one of the challenges when you embark on a sustainable project or model is you don't see a result from one day to the next. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we are so short term. We look at the P&Ls. I'm not making money. We look at the cash flow. Where can I cut? And I think today. There is no time to really look at short term, but we need to look at long term. And the reason being is because if we build a hotel, we wouldn't necessarily, light a match and burn it down. We want to preserve the asset. And I think what's happening in our world, we need to take care of our world. And for that, it's not short term strategy, it's a long term. I think we need to take care of our environment, but in order for us to take care of our environment, we need to take care of our people. Because the two things are hand in hand. There is no green without social, and that's essential.
And in some conversations with clients, when we propose to do a certification or to do an energy efficiency audit to reduce their cost, we're seeing it as an opportunity. But then they always come down to, but how much is it going to cost the certification? Is it worth it? Will I have more clients in the future if I have it? What's your idea in terms of projections? How do you respond to the extra cost today, but that will have benefit in the future?
Yeah, definitely, I would like to start seeing more sustainability strategies, more to be seen as not to reduce costs, but how can we generate more money, right, as a revenue generator. And I think the opportunity that we have right now, it's in innovation. And maybe the companies that are doing it right be able to share the data, because the data is what's not fully available. So owners and developers do not have the resources, do not have that data that really supports the financial pro forma that they're doing. So I think if all the hotel operators to start using one, I think it's called the GSTC or something, that really you can have all the data there and try to innovate as much as possible so that we can encourage operators and our clients to really take a stand, right? And also clients need to care, you know, because they know it's going to cost, on the forefront, it's going to cost money, but if you care, it doesn't matter how much it's going to cost because on the long run, you're going to offset it. So I think there's great opportunities for us as designers right now. Innovation is big. I would like to see the conversation in how also we can transform brown buildings into greener buildings, right? So for me, the future is regenerative design and building decarbonization, which you already mentioned, but also that education and that sharing of data so that we can encourage our clients.
Yeah, I think that the retrofitting is a very important process also for adaptation because we always focus on mitigation, but there is retrofitting also for infrastructure to make it more resilient. But of course, sometimes it's costly. Emilio, what do you see in terms of the trends towards the future? Do you see this being adopted more and more?
I hope so. Because as we said earlier, I don't think we have much time to not do it. It's a matter of a mindset switch that we have to have. I believe education has been there for years, actually for decades. I remember you and I were talking, Ricardo and I were talking about when U.S. Green Building Council was being formed in Washington, D.C. almost 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I happened to be there with a good friend, David Greenfield, and still today we're talking about it. It's been 3 decades. I was 12, by the way. It's been three decades, okay? And we're still talking about it. So yes, there is adaptability that has to happen. We have to continue educating our investors, our owners, and so forth. But there's data out there, and unfortunately I don't have it with me, but there's data that shows that even after investment on green sustainability solutions, there is better returns. As I said, I don't have it and I cannot speak to it, but there is proven record of this. So it's just a matter of taking time. I take it back to the pandemic. I mean, we all were told to stay put and do nothing. Unlike Arturo, I kept cutting my hair, right? I did. However,
you're going to grow it back.
However,
when it's done, right?
I was going to say I'm going to grow it when all of this happens, because you know, all kidding aside, and I have friends that I have lost to this terrible, unprecedented pandemic. But again, all kidding aside, this is serious, and a lot of us are not taking it that way.
Yeah, I think that the people that are living through wildfires or heat waves, they're taking it seriously.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing about climate change is that we see a lot of these impacts that I was mentioning before in developing countries.
Mm-hmm.
The countries that do not have the adaptability, the resources, the financial resources to respond to a heat wave or to a crisis like this.
If I may add also, one of the difficult things about climate change is the time lag between what we're doing now and what we're going to see in the future. And you know, similarly to hotel developments or hospitality developments, they take years and years. Yeah. And we're actually designing and building our properties that we're hoping to operate for decades to come. Yeah. The reality is that they might not be ready for this future. And I think this risk, we as an industry haven't really been able to grasp, whereas I actually see investors starting to think about that because they naturally think longer term. If you look at BlackRock that just announced that they're dropping all of their, I guess, greenhouse gas heavy assets and only investing in sustainable assets. So I think there are voices out there that are starting to come out, and we need to very quickly understand that that's a risk issue as much as an issue of looking after our planet.
Yeah, and I think that the issue of the climate risk being integrated as part of also the financial understanding of a project is critical, and disclosure will come more and more into the equation. I mean, the US government as well as the European Union is already requesting more and more disclosure, not only of the greenhouse gas emission plans reductions that you may have, but also of the risks. And that may even increase the cost of capital if you didn't do anything beforehand. And I guess that's the way to start.
And you'll end up, as you very rightly showed in your presentation, with stranded assets. And that is the last thing that we want from our projects.
Jesus, what do you see to the future? You said that doing a sustainability project from the start takes longer. What would be the suggestion for anyone that is thinking about or looking for financing for a project, to go back to the drawing board, or can we actually start from where we are? And maybe tell us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things that you said before to me was you have to be ready to be patient. You have to be patient to see results.
No, I think I may have misspoken earlier. I don't think it just takes longer if you start something from zero. I think it just takes long to see the results. Yeah. Okay, I think that's the issue. You don't see immediate impact. It's like switching a light. You switch the light, it's on or off. When you implement a sustainable plan or a sustainability plan, it just takes time to see whatever matrix you are trying to measure. It's not immediate. And I think we are very driven by short-term results. All of us as business people and investors. So I think the important thing here, and I don't like about trends, talking about trends. I hate the word trends because it's something that is in today and out tomorrow. Okay, but what I'm seeing a lot is, from the capital market, from the investor side, there is a lot more scrutiny. They want to know what your performance is going to look like, but they want to know what your key performance indicators, non-financial related, are in terms of, employee engagement, customer satisfaction, environmental impact, use of energy sources, etc. I think, there is a big shift now that I'm seeing where investors, okay, it's fine, show me your IRR, but I want to see all these other elements in terms of social and environmental impact. That's important. And the other thing, and with this I'll close, that is what's happening is beautiful. Okay, I know it's scary, everybody talks and everybody expects somebody else to fix it, but the beauty of it is 5 years ago, nobody was talking about this. I remember, in several places being introduced as a tree hugger, and people were like, wait a minute. And I was just recently introduced to a group of investors as a tree hugger. So in a short time, there was a big shift. I think everybody now understands that we have to come together to tackle one of the greatest challenges that we have as a generation. And I think, if we all come together and understand that it's going to take time, but we need to have a plan. And I think, you mentioned earlier, it's not about waiting for somebody else to do it. We just have to tackle it now.
We have to take action, for sure.
So the tree huggers here, I don't know, I think that we could be talking about this for a long time, but we ran out of time. But I know there is a session tomorrow that Anna will moderate or co-moderate that will go into depth into some of the options on the sustainability journey that we all have to do. And it's important that I mention journey because sometimes we see that people do not want to start because they don't know how, and they don't want to start if they don't know exactly how. Well, it's a journey. We're all learning. We all have learned in our work. But we're here to support you in that journey, and hopefully we'll come back again and continue being more and more people as tree huggers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are honored to welcome on stage Your Excellency Ivan Eskilsen, Minister of Tourism of this beautiful country, who will enlighten us on opportunities in this hub for the Americas and the world. Bienvenido, Ministro.
Good afternoon. I hope you're all enjoying this first session of SAHIC, our investment of tourism and hotel investment conference in Panama, which we're very proud to host, and that we're very sure that it will be very productive to everybody. So, as you all know, we've been 2.5 years waiting for this moment to meet again, not only with SAHIC, but at many, many conferences around the world. So as I said this morning, this is a great time to rethink, to think about the future in a different way. And this is what we've been focusing on doing in Panama. I don't know how many of you have already had the opportunity to get to know our beautiful country, but this is a country that for hundreds of years has positioned itself as a hub, and it has a lot of history behind that, which is also very interesting for tourism, by the way. And now we are trying to definitely move forward with a strategy that also allows for today's visitors, for today's types of visitors, to also get to know the culture and the nature all around our country, as well as our vibrant Panama City. So here's a presentation. I hope you all enjoy what we are about to share. So a bit of general information. Again, we're not sure if all of you know Panama. So Panama is a very small country located right at the heart of the Americas. We're talking about a country that has had a steady GDP growth for the last decade and a half or two. And also, it's one of the fastest growing countries at this moment. We grew 15% last year, year over year. And we have also one of the highest GDP per capita in the Americas, or in Latin America. Also, we are a country that has a very, let's say, controlled inflation rate also. So let's say one of the most attractive elements for investments in our country is not only the social, the political stability, but also the macroeconomic stability that we've had for years. Also important is the fact that we are also set to grow at the highest rate in Latin America for this year. This is also part of the story of Panama, our resilience and our ability to get back on our feet after this difficult pandemic throughout the world, having this 7.3% growth rate projected for this year. And also, important to look at is how we've been able to attract investment at a steady rate throughout the years. So our FDI, the last couple of years, we share here the pre-pandemic investment amounts. So we certainly have a very steady flow of capital to our country based on all the elements we mentioned before. So we continue to be an attractive country. We are a bit above, we have been a bit above our peers in the region as far as investment is concerned. All right, so as far as our vision, what are we aiming for in Panama? I mentioned this morning that we've been able to approve for the first time ever in our country a sustainable tourism master plan. I mean that this is the first time it's been approved by the president and our cabinet. So before, we didn't, even though we had very interesting and very attractive tourism initiatives in the country, and we've also had plans, but this is the first time we're really executing a plan. We were able to approve it also at the beginning of the President Cortizo's administration. And the vision we set forth is to be recognized as a world-class sustainable tourist destination due to the extraordinary richness and diversity of our natural and cultural heritage and the quality of its service. The previous panel was talking about the importance of sustainability. We believe that will be the norm for the future, and that today's consumers are not only, let's say, preferring sustainable experiences in tourism, but are more and more demanding sustainable experiences in tourism. So I mentioned before the tourism plan approved by the cabinet. Also, several other elements that are aligned. So we have sort of having the stars aligned in our country, where we have the deployment of initiatives. One of them is the $100 million loan from the IDB approved under, and is currently under execution. And this is focused on 7 of the 8 priority destinations according to the master plan throughout the country. So we're focusing on improving the experience of visitors with water, with sewage, with airports, with electricity, roads. So it is an interinstitutional execution focus, although we manage the loan from the Authority of Tourism. Also important, I mentioned this early in the morning, the fact that we have $771 million in projects by other entities in the government, also on these 8 priority destinations to improve the experiences. And also important is that we are we have, for the first time, a steady allocation of promotion funds in Panama. 5 years ago, the International Promotion Fund Prontour was created, and starting this government, we're the first ones to allocate funding, allowing for a steady promotion internationally beyond one government and the next. So the idea is that beyond the finalization of this government, that the promotion can continue beyond 2024 and have a steady, steady promotion and visitor attraction. This is the location of the 8 destinations within the country. We won't have time to go into each one, so anybody that can be interested in more information, particularly about any of these sites, or just in general more information, you can approach the team of the Authority of Tourism for more information. So we have the Panama City, and we have in the western part Bocas del Toro, Tierras Altas, and Boquete. In the central part of the country, Santa Catalina, Pedací, Riviera Pacifica, and then you have Portobello in the Caribbean as a town that attracts part of the historical importance as well as the nature that surrounds it and the culture that's embedded in Portobello. So a bit of how are we focusing to present our country. First of all, this is Panama seen from above. This is Panama laying down. You have Colombia on the south, and Costa Rica would be on the left-hand side. The geological story of Panama has everything to do with our importance as a hub. According to geologists and scientists, the emergence of the Isthmus of Panama is one of the most important geological events to happen in the last 60 million years. So this is a very unique story that is told in the Biomuseo, the only museum that has been designed by Frank Gehry in Latin America. And the story is as follows, and it's actually based on information by the Smithsonian. So when the Isthmus emerged 3 million years ago, there used to be one ocean, so basically 2 oceans were created. The climate of the Earth, the currents of the Earth changed, and the climate of the Earth changed. So basically, the biodiversity of the planet changed due to the emergence of the tiny isthmus, and also the biodiversity connected from the north to the south. So this is why in Panama you'll find species that you won't find maybe in North America or South America or vice versa. And again, this is what any of you can see in this world-class museum located right at the entrance of the canal, where visitors are invited to explore then Panama as a living museum once you finish the going through it. But this also takes me into the importance that we have of the alliance with the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute that has been in Panama for over 100 years. So we have all this scientific information, even considering that because of their research, one of the research centers they have is considered the most intensively studied tropical forest in the world. This is why we have moved forward with a strategy focused called Tourism Conservation Research that was actually launched in Panama over 20 years ago. This is actually, it was at the origin of Hotel Gamboa, led by Bern Resorts when it was originally founded. And then we have sort of reactivated this strategy. We invited the Dr. Ayala that created the strategy, and now we are working under this tourism model that is really now, we believe, more attractive for today's visitors based on the preferences of travelers than it was 20 years ago. So this focus, again, is on trying to attract this focus of traveler, even though we know that all types of travelers will come to our country, but once we focus and target our marketing and the tourism product development, we are trying to attract this type of traveler called the discerning traveler, which appreciates, let's say, contact with local communities, local cultures, and also cares about the preservation of the environment. So we have now a country that's actually more than 30% protected in national parks. Also, we have 7 different variety of cultures that you have in Panama that sort of presents the perfect scenario for this type of traveler that we have today. And this is also taking into consideration one of the major trends that we were seeing in travel. We're talking about the transformative experiences or transformative travel. Well, people are looking for the sense of purpose when they visit a country or any place. They want to connect with the culture. They want to have a change in experience when they visit. So we are also working with our destination to create more and more of these types of experiences. And again, based on these unique characteristics, we believe Panama is an ideal place as a laboratory to push forward these types of initiatives. And we are certainly getting a lot of initial recognition now that we've started implementing all this. Focused again, not only on the fact that we are one of 3 countries in the world that are carbon negative, speaking of the topic of climate, but also 30% protected in land and sea, and all these variety of communities and cultures that I bet many of you maybe might not be aware of, because of the fact that Panama has mostly been known because of our modern and vibrant city, which will continue to be an attraction in our country. One of the main projects we are working on that pushes forward in this strategy, I can't go through all the projects, but certainly this one I'd like to share is that project called 1,000 Kilometers of Trails, where we are implementing and rehabilitating trails throughout the country to place value to the natural assets that we have. So we're integrating also local communities to make sure they benefit from these trails. Otherwise, we believe it's the only way for real sustainable tourism to happen is when the local community can benefit from it, because then they will be the ones that will take care of the most of the area, make sure it's clean, make sure that they defend it at all costs. So this is really the work that we believe needs to be done at this moment, and we've been also making the best of the pandemic for this. Some of the international recognition we received, I actually had an interview today with the Travel to Latam group. They shared this article on how UNESCO has highlighted our tourism master plan, because the comment we received was that it focuses with an innovative focus as far as sustainable tourism is concerned for the future. And the same way we received an award as the best destination on this category, the future of travel, from Newsweek magazine, again recognizing our particular focus on how we are involving local communities in this implementation. Also important to share is that a few weeks ago, or a month ago, we had Adventure Next in Panama with over 100 international companies getting together in a marketplace, getting together and sharing. And we also had this declaration where we wanted to make sure that because we have the chair of a Central American Council, we all committed together to this idea of a tourism for the future, of preparing for the future of tourism, and also inviting other ministers of tourism of the region. And then we received also support of the declaration from the UNWTO. So taking on this idea also on how we believe Panama as a hub and our natural attraction as a natural hub. So this takes us into our strength as an events hub. So Panama, as we shared before, because of our geostrategic position, has many strengths because of it. But also, this is why we've now, before the pandemic, we had 87 direct flights to Panama City. That was the most in Latin America. Now we are at around 76. So we're very fast recovering our connectivity. And because of this, and connected to this also, we've recently inaugurated the Panama Convention Center. This is a brand new convention center that has the capacity to host around 24,000 people. And again, pushing forward to the positioning we have as a hub, and in this case, as an events hub, and located actually right next to the Biomuseo, right at the entrance of the Panama Canal, really supporting the positioning for our country. Also, again, the idea of a hub, in this case as a cruise hub, we just inaugurated or started operations in a brand new port terminal in the Pacific to complement the existing cruise terminal in the Caribbean, and creating a unique characteristic because we are basically the only country that has 2 ports and also a canal connecting both. So a few other items to finalize. Another important characteristic that we've implemented, or initiative that we've implemented, is a tourism cabinet. So this is something that was started in this administration. As I mentioned, $771 million in projects. Moving forward, this Friday, actually, we are reactivating the actual meetings of the cabinet, in this case in one of the 8 priority destinations, to again propose how can we, from other institutions in the government, improve the experiences in these priority destinations. The destination marketing organization I mentioned before also, as well as specifically focus in investments. We definitely would be more than eager or interested in sharing with any of you that might want more information on the different, let's say, incentives that we have for tourism investments. One of them is Law 180, where we offer exonerations of import taxes, property taxes, income taxes, and others based on different types of tourism products. Also, Law 122, which is actually right now getting an update in the Assembly, in the Asamblea or the Senate. This particular incentive is focused on the fact that 20,000 of the 32,000 rooms, hotel rooms in Panama, are located in Panama City. So the idea right now is, with this sustainable tourism model, to decentralize tourism and really also lengthen the stay and increase the spending per visitor in our country. And finally, the idea of this article within Law 80 that focuses on special tourism products. So we're talking about agro-tourism, rural tourism, ecotourism, sports, scientific, cultural, ethnic and health, amusement parks, aquariums, private museums, dolphinariums, conservation activities, and exhibitions of protected species. This also allows for different incentives to share with investors that are looking to invest in our country. And again, just to finalize as a final note, the idea of all this is that we are truly certain that we are moving in the right direction as far as what the fastest growing segment of travelers is looking for today. But we certainly need, besides the investment from the government sector, of all the investment that we're making, we certainly need the private sector to go hand in hand with the government and to attract capital and to implement these innovative solutions to move forward and to really generate the impact that we know we can create from tourism as a tool for development and as a tool for growth in our country. So thank you very much. I hope you've all enjoyed. And any questions, again, we are more than eager to support.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and congratulations on your beautiful country. It is time for a break. We invite you to visit the exhibition room. We remind you that you can share your experiences from this meeting